Happy New Year's. So glad you guys joined me tonight. Sorry for the short notice, but I figured since I had time, might as well utilize it, put it to some purpose. My dog's gonna be begging in the background for a minute. She's being a brat tonight. So, my mother's turnout was done with Jenosque people. So I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about what her experiences were with those people. Her turnout was done at the age of 6. So her her experiences were at a very young age compared to mine when my turnout was done when I was 15. Uh, because, well, I had a different set of people to deal with, or sets of cryptid people to deal with. Hey, Cosmic, how you doing? So I hope y'all have had a great holiday season. I've had a pretty good one. So I wanted to bring up something first before I get into the whole Ishka thing. Brendan Mayhew's channel, the fellow I mentioned last live, he's Australian, I believe. He's got a new video up called Holy Smokes, Big Tree Crack. And in the middle of that, or towards the end of that video, at 25 minutes 40 seconds, he catches yahat, or huyat, excuse me, words meaning another person. Those words are heard here in the forests as well. So whichever kind of Yahweh Bigfoot creature he's dealing with speaks the same language as the ones here in the Northwest. So that's something to check out. And I think I've heard that word multiple times up here. I think I've caught it on one of my my videos, but I'm gonna try to go out and intentionally catch that word set here, see if we can confirm the language. That would be very interesting to be able to do. Uh, yeah, uh, I let Leona know that she's fine to be here. There's nothing was an issue. It was just a matter of being timed out inappropriately. Hey, Leona, I'm so glad you made it tonight. Yes, she's aware. We worked that out, and Leona's been an online presence, and I kind of consider her an online friend of mine. I've known her for a couple of years now and spoken with her through different channels online concerning the topics of Bigfoot. She's always had really good insights. She's had some very interesting perspectives, things I hadn't thought of. So I really appreciate her input, and I'm so glad she's able to be back here without an issue. Hey Ben, Happy New Year. Oh, I got the other package today. Well, yesterday. Thank you, Ben. I'm going to start charging those pieces and seeing if I can start employing them or deploying them, as the case may be, in my outings and around the home here. So hopefully, more good footage will show up soon. At least that's my well, that's my hope. It's got you might have gotten timed out by accent. Yeah, don't when people get a little quick at things, sometimes they go overboard a little bit by accident. It's okay, no worries. We're all good, I hope. Anyway, my mom's turnout was done down in California, in the western deserts of lower mid California. And the group of cryptids she was around was a family group of 5 Ishka. Now, the thumbnail picture up on this particular broadcast is of an adult male Ishka, I think. Because, one, it's in the area my mom took me to where I went and investigated the Ishka cave system, little bubble caves. And the description is very much like what my mother described them as. Because I've only ever seen the one juvenile once at close range, and he hadn't developed the facial differences that the adult males have. So their females and males supposedly don't look the same in that particular species. The females supposedly look more primate-like, flat-faced, baboonish, which is the picture I put up on today's Jenosque, or Jenosque of today, was what a live I did a few months back, is a potentially juvenile female, and the thumbnail on this particular live is potentially a picture of an adult male. So the males, according to my mother, had protrusions just in front of the ears here off top of the uh, bone, your cheekbone here. There's supposedly a little horn that sticks out, a deciduous horn, and they supposedly have a pair of little nub bumps above their eye ridge area that look like little protrusions, like little horns, but they're not horns. They're just bumps, bone bumps under the skin. Those supposedly develop when they get exceedingly old. That and their facial structure is much more human looking than the females. I don't know how true it is. I know it's the description my mother gave me, and the two pictures that I have kind of indicate the same thing, but not having been there personally, other than the one incident, going into the cave and having the juvenile nearly push me out, um, I don't have anything else to go on. But a couple of pictures. So my mother claimed that they have a very, very stern attitude towards trading. Uh, you cannot, um, you cannot try to cheat them in any way or try to fool them. They will not react well to that. They have, according to old native legends, they have very high moral standards when it comes to interacting. They have certain ethical expectations. They don't want you to act out of sorts in their area. They won't trade with you if you cheat them. Uh, they are very meticulous in their work too when they are making items. They do a lot of grass woven items, according to my mother. Not just shoes. Supposedly they make little grass woven baskets of some kind as well. Something I've never had a chance to see. But my mother and grandmother both actually described that sort of thing. The shoes, little baskets, and some garments, according to my mother. They would make little rain shawls as well. Kind of like the Nootka Indian or Haida Indian rain shawls, where it's just like a capelet, but they're made with like elm bark or inner alder bark is another one that they can use that will create a waterproof kind of shawl for them. They don't always make them, but that was one of the goods that my mother saw the production of. Now they are very reclusive, from what I understand. Uh, my mom claimed that they spoke just like the other, Sabe people. They've got language and they write just like the other Sabe people, but that they don't like to live in large groups. She claimed that they lived in groups that were 5 to 10 individuals, very small. I don't know how true that is, but the group that I've observed over the years, my mother showed me, uh, hasn't seemed to change too much in size. They seem to stay at about 10 or 12 individuals in the group. So it would make sense that what she was saying was potentially true. But, without any real investigation into these beings, with just observation, it's going to be hard to know anything about them other than, what lore might say, or if somebody's been lucky enough to have some personal experience around them. That's about the best we're going to get at this point, since there isn't really a serious nature in science. Uh, yeah, Ieshka is, just to make the appropriate sounding Ishka. Cosmic, what do you think of the story on mainstream news of two Oregon men found dead while trying to find Sasquatch in Washington? I'm hoping they didn't run into something bad out there, but that is a possibility, and there are instances here in the Northwest occasionally that are kind of suggestive that either they got into the sights of a predator, or they run into something they probably should have left alone. It's another reason for trying to bring forward the different kinds of species and how they act, because like the Ishka, you can't look them in the face. Even my mother said that during her turnout. She always had to keep her head down, more or less. There were a few times, she was able to look them in the face without any kind of reprisal, but it was only allowed in certain settings, as she said. They had to be instructing you in some way, and then it was okay for you to look them in the face. But if you were not being instructed or taught something, they consider you looking them in the face as being rude. So quite often there are intergroup customs that are unknown to us now as modern people, because we don't interact with them anymore. That whole level of interaction has been pretty well removed from our society because of everything that happened with the Native Americans 150 years ago. So the information is just not there to act appropriately around some of these species. Yeah, Ben, same question here. SCWI. I wrote to the author who said they were chasing a mythical creature. I was, I, over the years, there have been some very peculiar instances here in Oregon with people going missing. There was or just, ending up uh, dead because they've gone looking in the wrong area. I've heard of a couple of different instances over the years, usually around Mount Hood area or up in Washington. Uh, in fact, the one incident I know somebody who was attacked by a Sabe of some kind, or Bigfoot of some kind, I should say, up there. He lost his right arm, so it got bitten off. And he saw what bit it off. So you have to uh, you have to think more. How would you put it? You have to consider the time. Like the fellow that ended up getting his arm bitten off, he was out for a day walk on a hiking trail. But the time of the year was late in the season, and there weren't a lot of goods. No, no. It's already past berry season. It was getting into the early fall when he took his walk. He didn't have any food with him. He didn't have anything but water with him. And, his backpack got searched before his arm got bitten off by the creatures. So, food depletion in an area might make some of these people more desperate and potentially cause issues between us and them. So that's something to keep in mind. Part of the reason why I always carry something with me, or try to. If I'm farther out, yes, you have a chance of attracting, a lot of the other predators like a bear. But at the same time, I'd rather hand somebody a tin of meat than have my arm taken off. And that was, something that natives we always leave something for them, and it's because it builds good relationship, and then they recognize us not as anything except another brother in the woods. Yeah, I agree with you. They didn't show footage of that particular incident, just a few still shots of the scene. Why no details? What are they hiding? Yeah, it really makes me wonder in some cases because it really does seem that that there is quite a bit of information that's being withheld. Hey, Phil. And that doesn't help us paint any kind of a clear picture. Because if you don't have any kind of understanding of what's going on in an area like that, you won't know what kind of an area to avoid or what to look for. So it really doesn't do the public in general any kind of duty. You know, it doesn't serve us any kind of good purpose. If officials refuse to talk about things in the dark, which is ridiculous, with the number of them that are out in the woods and the different varieties of them, uh, it it's a socially irresponsible thing that they're doing, in my opinion. Hey, Bad Pup, Happy New Year. Go ahead, Churchill. I love questions. Hey, you Eunice, how you doing tonight? Okay, Phil. Every Sabe I've ever seen, 20 or more sightings, have looked right at them in the eyes. Yeah, many of them you can. Many of them don't have a single issue with it. The only species that I'm aware of that don't like being looked at in the face are the Ishka. And the booger people. They're not real happy about you looking at them. But the majority of different kinds of cryptids out there are not like that. They don't care. Uh, I mean, there's some myths saying not to or to put your head down, but a lot of the ones I've been around don't seem to care at all that you're looking at them. It's the couple species that are a little bit different in their behaviors. And it's probably because of their social standing within the groups, you know, within the overall communities that are out there as far as cryptids go. The Ishka themselves consider themselves the parents of the Gwantch people, so they consider themselves to be of a higher social status within the overall community. So it's a point of respect for them, actually. They don't want you disrespecting them. That's why it's, you know, if they are, like my mom said, if they're sitting teaching you, then it's expected that you understand what they're saying and you have the ability to look at them at that point and to directly communicate without the air of loftiness, so to speak. But it's only the only reason why they have that is because they believe that they are a very ancient species and a parent species. And according to my mom, the nubs on the side of their head, the little what looks like little tusks, she claimed that they said that their origins was from a boar-like creature, a creature that had boar-like tusks at one point in time, and the tusks that are left on the sides of their cheekbones are just defensive tools that have decreased in size and more are now just, you know, there for looks because they don't live exactly the same way they did in really ancient times. But that's their own stories about them, and that's what my mother learned from them directly was that they believe that the bone adaptations and the little tusks are left over from when they were, you know, a different, very ancient creature that evolved forward into a more human-looking being. I don't know how true that is, but it is something they are aware of, supposedly, and it is something interesting to note because people people have seen different varieties of different kinds of cryptids out there, and some of them have, you know, bone differences in the face. I've heard of some creatures that have tusks. You know, uh, there are some that supposedly have horns. Uh, there are others that have protrusions in different areas facially, like The Yaren have the little bone ridges very similar to what orangutans develop when they get really old, but not all of them have it. The other is Ishka. Males grow long hair on their heads, whereas their females don't. Their females remain more primate looking, supposedly. I don't know how true, again, because I've not lived in a colony with them. I have not, you know, traded and interacted. I spent about 20-30 minutes in their area when I was a teen, and my mom had shown me where their cave system was and expected me to go look at what they made and how they lived. But it was a very brief encounter that I had with them, so I don't have the amount of knowledge that my mother had because she spent like 6 or 8 months living with them and interacting with them while she was in the tutelage of her grandmother. Yeah, be real careful about shooting at them, any of them, because it can lead to really bad response um, out of them. If you manage to kill one, there is a possibility you'll be attacked yourself, or if you don't put the one down that you shot at, they may not choose to run away. So be careful of that. They're not like other animals. You can shoot a bear or wound a bear, and it may or may not have a grudge against you. If you wound, a Bigfoot of any kind, then there might be a grudge because their mentality is far more like ours. Yeah, Sabe don't typically cause problems, and that's something else I wanted to get into concerning the term Sabe. Sabe is actually a word that means to act from your heart, to act in a brotherly way towards another human being. So there's the assumption within the word that you're a human being interacting with another human being, and you're acting in an appropriate way. You're trading with them, you're helping each other, you're being civil with each other, and all of your activities and actions are meant to be in a civil manner towards each other. Sabe, working from the heart. And the other understanding of the word comes from Japan. Sabe means master or teacher in the Japanese language. So you can also have that aspect with some of them, especially the ones from the Deer Society. That word has that dual implication, very much so in the Deer Society, from what I understand. Okay, it's okay. Phil, some animals, cryptids don't like to be looked at straight in the, yeah, means you're being aggressive. Yes, that is one of the potentials. And I do know that there have been, like when I was goofing around trying to understand the dog people a little better, I used Baboon's happy face, which was, furrowed brow, and the Arr. My mother said the Ishka did that same sort of thing as their happy face. They furl their brow at you and smile and make you think you were being attacked, but it isn't. It's just their happy face. So there is some shared behavior. I know that when I made that face towards the dogman that was chasing my vehicle, he looked very surprised and startled. So I assumed that he was familiar with the face, making, and that he may have seen it previously, maybe from an Ishka. My mother said it always looked like they were grimacing at you when they were actually smiling at you. So there are some behaviors also that might be completely misinterpreted by us because we're unfamiliar with the particular uh, mode of communication. Okay, Phil. let's see, black hazelnuts, black. My grandson saw yellow, just like headlights, emanating light. You know, Phil, that bright yellow, have your grandson take a look at Badger eye shine. See if it was the same yellow. Because if it's that particular kind of limeish green yellow, uh, you might have badger people in the area. If it goes more to the bright yellow side, you're gonna have a different kind of cryptid. But if it's in that green yellow perspective, you might have badger people there. Bad pup. Oh, definitely did not look like eyeshine of Skinwalker. I don't know. Skinwalkers are supposedly shapeshifters from the Navajo reservation that turn into coyotes. So I don't know as you're going to have much in the way of shapeshifting uh, in general. The native lore there on that res claim that the skinwalkers all belong to the same region, same cave, same family of people. Yeah, Wendigo. Uh, yeah, I've seen hazel eyes with the one Skookum woman that we interacted with. My mom and I interacted with in the sequoias. It's very interesting. Uh, in fact, the one chimpanzee that has eye whites, born recently, I think at the few years back, at the I think San Jose Zoo, I want to say. It's a chimpanzee that has eye whites instead of black, because most chimpanzees have black uh, eye area around the iris. It also has hazel-colored eyes, which has made it unfortunately difficult for that particular chimpanzee to interact with other chimpanzees. They don't react well to the eye type, so he's having a hard time down there. Or at least he was. I don't know. I haven't looked into that particular individual again. But that zoo's had some unusually anomalous chimpanzees in the past as well. Yeah, I think that some of them can actually see quite well, both our auric energies and certain types of light. Like I'm pretty sure they can see trail camera lights that activate the mode for recording, because they do have a tendency to avoid those kinds of areas. I mean, you can even in daylight. Um, it's really hard to get them to interact with the camera of any way, shape, or form unless they accidentally walk under it or bypass it without noticing it. But they usually notice that stuff pretty quickly from what I can figure out. Cosmic, yeah, I've seen some of those horn skulls from South America. Yeah, and in fact, Cosmic, we had, trying to say, I think it was around 1909, I want to say. There was an article, I think it was in the Pennsylvania area, about a cave finding where they found 6 skeletons in a cave. They all had the little deciduous horns, and they were collected up to be taken to the Smithsonian, and they've never been. Those skeletons have never been seen again. Some of the descriptions also claim that they had the bumps off the sides of their, uh, you know, cheekbones. But that was an account by one of the people that helped load the skeletons in a box to take them on a train. So a lot of unusual characteristics about those particular skeletons. They were also reported to be about 7 feet in height. My mom claimed that the Ishka stayed relatively small. that they weren't huge species. They stayed between 5 and 7 feet in height, and I think my dad's interaction with the Ishka when he was in the Okanagan as a child, I think he claimed they were also no more than about 7 feet as adults. So, yeah, that stays consistent. Whereas some species will be quite large, like some of the sun-faced people will get 12 feet. The Aaron can get pretty good size too, and so can the Gwantch people and Oma people. Gwantch people have a tendency to hit about 10 foot, as do the Oma. So that's, 4 foot taller than the average human. Let me see what other kind of questions we got. Do Sabe and Dogman find shelter or stay sheltered during winter months? They typically, Bad Pup, live in family groups, and the dogman that my friend interacted with after having the fight with the juvenile, he claimed that they lived in a bed system together. It was like a little shared community kind of living, so they weren't, the bed system was not conjoined. They lived separately in little nook homes that were constructed within, a few feet of each other. So there are those kinds of structures that are made out of sticks and twigs and whatnot. And Bigfoot, all the Bigfoot that I've run across, depending on the type, they'll live in, like the Oma and Gwantch have a tendency to live in structures right next to each other. So they'll make these what look like big upside down baskets on the ground with a little entryway in the front. And they'll typically set them along a ridge line, and they'll construct them so that they've got bush cover. Sometimes they'll make like a bunch of them kind of on the land lie. They'll make a bunch of them kind of interconnected, so they'll crawl from one section to another, and they'll just be shaped into the hillside. They'll be placed by the terrain's demands, and again, they'll typically be covered. So if you look up at those structures, you'll think they're just a big, berry bush, but once you get up to the area and follow the trail into the structure, those structures can be quite large. I think the biggest one I ever found that was conjoined and went on for some distance was probably 30 feet-ish long and uh, probably 15 feet at the widest. So it had several individuals, 5 or 6 individuals that were in that particular structure. I did find one that was longer, that was all in a line, that had, I think, 8 individuals, like bed areas, and that was almost 70 feet long and about, 10, 15 foot at the widest. But it was far more open and noticeable than the one that was very packed up in the little ravine that I found. So they do take cover. Uh, they build their own. They build their own homes, and they do maintain them. They will not move from those little nook homes until, you know, the family gets too big, or the material rots away, or they move for game. Sometimes they'll have 2 or 3 of those kinds of little structures within their hunting territory, and they'll go from one to the other as the season goes and progresses. So they'll follow their food sources, and these areas are usually only, a couple miles in diameter to maybe 5 miles, typically for a small group. They don't seem to range very far until you get into bigger groups, and then bigger groups, uh, they uh, they deal with a lot of trading and whatnot, so they will have interactions over greater distance, and they will have a tendency to have a much bigger living area normally. Um, yeah, bad pup. Uh, they The little decidual horns can be quite disturbing looking. Yeah. So we humans are conditioned to look into eyes critical when, yeah, driving, obviously. I would not shoot except life or death. Yeah, be really careful. Okay, Ben, you mentioned Jenosque as a French word. I'm wondering if French history has a more advanced view of Sabe than the others. Also learned that Patagonia means, yeah, feet big in Spanish or Portuguese. Yes, uh, that is very true, Ben. But I don't know. I know that the French trappers that dealt with the Nez Perce Indians in that region back east and lower Canada around Greater Falls area, where you have oh gosh, the Great Big Falls up there, Niagara. Uh, it was that region where they started calling them Jenosque, and I think the term actually is an old French term. I haven't looked a lot into that particular word, but it might show some very interesting information if we did. Well, also Patagonia. What's the name of the tribe down there? There's actually a tribe of individuals that range in the 7 foot height and have domed heads. I can't remember the name of the particular tribe. There's still some of those tribal people are still alive today. You know, they still exist within the South America cultures. Uh, Interesting to think about. Okay, Phil, sadly most like to observe us, and their juveniles like to prank us, scare us, it seems. Yeah, they do a lot of that, Phil. Uh, they like to count coup, so to speak. And when you're really getting into like the different Bigfoot areas and you're trying to interact with them and you're getting into their immediate foraging grounds, that kind of behavior accelerates. They do more sneaking up on you. The young ones in particular will like to sneak up on you. Uh, the females will have a tendency to throw things at you if you are too close and they've got a baby with them. So there's a lot of that sort of interaction that occurs when you're in their areas actively looking for them. Okay, Cosmic, they let their juveniles roam around unattended. Some, like those, are the time trouble might be invited. I've noticed that the couple of times I've gotten chest pops, at me, it's been over a juvenile trying to be way too friendly. It's uh, like up in the Umpqua. I had an incident a couple of years ago, a couple of incidences a couple of years ago that were consistently the same. It was a little juvenile. Uh, I realized they were in the area, and one of them was very interested in a particular food item. So I was setting out the particular food item to see if they'd come take it, and he was going to try to take it during the day. He was going to try to cross the little stream and come get it, because evidently he liked that food item a lot. And I heard the chest pop, 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 like a gorilla does, and heard the rushing of something coming downhill on the other side of the creek, but it wasn't at me. The next thing I heard were the three clacks, pap, 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 telling the little one, that's a human, stay the heck away from him. And then the younger one, he halted, he didn't move forward. And the two times I heard that particular chest beating going on. It was both times about that individual, that juvenile trying to get too close and trying to interact during the day. The reason why he was so interactive with me is because when I realized he was there across the stream the first time I spoke in Abenaki and said hello and called him a friend, he answered friend and then immediately tried to hop out of the bushes to come say hi because he was not used to people being able to speak his language, is my guess. And that I over encouraged him and worried the parents. So that chest popping, I think, was more of a warning towards him, not me in particular. I think it was, letting him know he had overstepped his bounds. He was trying to get too friendly with people, and we are not to be trusted. Because normally they don't let their juveniles run around. When their juveniles start interacting with the world without too much of the way of parents in the way, they're 4 or 5 years old. They're learning how to. They've already done their ABCs. They've already learned how to read and write. They've learned some basic skills, and at 4 or 5, they're starting to learn to hunt and forage and collect food items. So they're a little more likely to be in a more tutor-like situation, more group-like situation, kind of like the multiple little structures that I was showing this last week. That's most likely a group of individuals, little hunters, young hunters that are probably 3, 4 years old, maybe as old as 5, but I doubt it, because those structures are not much larger than me. I could get into one of those structures, lay down, and be completely covered. I'm 5'9". And I could also probably stand up at them and look out the little observation holes, uh, and not bump my head too bad or anything. I could be in one of those structures, but it would be a tight fit. So I'm assuming that the individuals in that particular group are a bunch of young ones, probably 3, 4 years old, maybe a little bit shorter than me. I don't think they're going to be more than about 5.5 foot in height, probably more like 4 to 5 foot in height. And they're being, taught to forage together. They're being taught to maintain line of sight. They're being taught how to use camouflage, build blinds so that they can keep themselves out of the view of deer, so that a deer will more likely walk right by you instead of staying 40, 50 feet, 100 feet away. Because deer in this area have a tendency to walk right within a few hundred feet of you, and they don't really care. Some of the deer up here actually will walk within 15, 20 feet of you, 30 feet of you. But if you're out hunting and you're trying to learn how to hunt, a little bit of cover will definitely allow a deer to walk right next to you, making it much easier for you to catch dinner. Okay, bad pup. There was a recent video where a helicopter pilot landed on the side of a snowy mountain peak, and there were fresh, clear Sabe extra large footprints leading up a steep, snowy mountain. Yeah, actually, I like tracking in the snow. And the reason why I like tracking in the snow is because you have a 100% chance of finding tracks if you're in an area where there are Bigfoot. They can't hide their tracks in snow because it's a constantly malleable surface. And until it melts, those tracks are going to be there. And there's no way to hide your track unless you backtrack in your own track, or you step in a muddy place where there is no snow, or a rocky place where there is no snow. Otherwise, you're gonna find tracks. Snow is almost guaranteed to reveal tracks, and they'll usually, remain in the snow for a couple of days, if not longer. That was the thing that I noticed during the winter when I was still out of my turnout, and I was having problems with the sun-faced people. I could track them during the summer a bit because the ground was nice and dusty where I was. Had a lot of fine silt to it, but man, I could definitely track them during the winter because their tracks were all over the place, and they couldn't hide them at all, and nor did they bother to try. So snow is an excellent time to go tracking. Okay, Phil, yellow eye shine 40 feet off the ground, 14 feet off the ground. Grandson agreed to tell what he saw on slide on vid. Wow, nice. Yellow eyeshine though, if it isn't in the green spectrum, you might be dealing with a tengu. If you are dealing with a tengu or a potential more violent species, be really, really careful in those areas. Don't get don't get too curious. I mean, be curious, but be very aware that you are potentially in a dire situation just being near something like that one. Because there aren't very many of them that have yellow or amber colored eyeshine, and it's usually the red bun people or the more. Hey, 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 hey. Is it? Hey, Harry coming home, honey. Don't worry about it. My gosh, you're all right, pups. Sorry. Hey, just first coming home. West Coast native belief: Sabe eye color can change depending upon mood. I've never known that to be the case. So, um, the eyeshine of the individuals that I've seen have been remained consistent. Like the Oma always have red eyeshine, as do Gwantch. Uh, yeah, just like a bear or a deer or any other critter out there, you know. Deer have white eyeshine. Bear can have amber to red eyeshine, usually. Foxes have red eyeshine. Dogs have green eyeshine. Their eyeshine doesn't change any more than any other animal. Even our eyeshine doesn't change because, you know, people have glowing red eyes when you take the wrong camera angle. It's due to our diet. So uh, I don't think I think that's mythology. To be, to be honest, I think them changing eyeshine is mythology. Now, there might be more than one cryptid in the area that has different colored eyeshine. I can believe that because I've seen that happen. You know, when Jen Jen was on our property, her eyeshine was red. You could see her at night. The Gugway's eyeshine was amber colored at night. So there is a possibility that you might think that their eyeshine is changing color when actually you're just experiencing a different kind of cryptid in the same region. Hey, Mr. Hanson, what's up? Uh, no, red doesn't mean angry. It just means that their tapetum lucidum is open, like a deer's. And deer's eyes will appear, or bear's eyes. They all appear to produce their own light. Uh, I don't know why we think a little differently about the Bigfoot. Maybe it's because some of their eye shine's incredibly bright looking. Like the Badgerman's eyes are like freaking headlights. They're really bright looking when you see them, especially when you're up close. Just like Badger's eyes. Badger's eyes at night appear to be like little flashlights. They're really bright. It's just the nature of them. And no, they don't open their tapetum lucidum because they're angry. It can be because they are upset, but it's not the general purpose. Normally, they open them because they can't see well, and they're needing to see better. So they, you know, like any other night foraging creature, they that have tapetum lucidum, they'll open them so that they can see better and they can traverse the ground a little easier, and you know, probably not fall over stuff. They don't. Their eyes don't change color. Their eyeshine doesn't change color. If you're dealing with red and yellow eyeshine in the same area, you're dealing with two different cryptids, not one that has changing eye color. Uh, Bad Pup Glitterman has made headlines, guys in the south with large cryptids in the trees, breaking branches. Nice, because that video is actually quite interesting. Bad Pup. owls can also be shapeshifters as well. Yeah, it's only if you're dealing with, you know, shamanistic stuff. I don't think that's a normal critter. I don't think that's an average creature. Phil, I think the one my grandson saw, same Yahweh as last spring, white fire, wildfire wood cutting. Well, they do have a tendency to live in the same areas habitually. So if you're going into their hunting grounds where they forage, there's a good likelihood you'll run into them again. Uh, some of the groups that I've been watching over and trying to interact with have remained in the same areas for 30, 40 years. They don't move. They don't migrate. They don't go anywhere. Most of them don't live in caves. Some species do, but I haven't seen that as a normal, typical kind of behavior. The little bubble caves that the Ishka live in, they're not very big. They don't go down into the ground. They're not large by any means. They're usually just in a parapet hanging area where they've dug out a little bit and they've made a, a cave that's about the size of a bed. It's as long as their body and maybe 3-4 feet wide. So it's just a outcropping cave. It's types of things I've seen them in. I've never seen one in any kind of a cave. The only cave areas I've seen where there's something unusual in it, it's not been that kind of cryptid. It's not been a Bigfoot. It's not been a Sabe that's in the cave. It's been another kind of cryptid, another unidentified ancient species or historic species, but not a Bigfoot. Same height. Yeah, they'll typically, you know, as adults, they'll remain the same height. Cosmic. They're humans that have occasional eye color change from brown to green or hazel, Scotch genetics. Oh, that's a possibility. My eyes do change. My irises will change a little bit depending on my mood. I'll go from like blue to really vibrant green to more hazel green. But I don't think it's anything too unusual, and I don't think it's all that emotionally related. Maybe, but I think it's more dietary related. As I shift my diet throughout the year, my eyes will change slightly in color. At least that's my personal observation. Leona, CCTV cameras catch sightings and now Ring doorbell cameras. Yeah, uh, don't rely on IR. Yeah, that I've noticed that a lot of catches have been happening on the Ring cameras, doorbell cameras. That's very interesting because that again, they don't rely on IR, and I'm pretty sure that the Bigfoot don't notice those cameras at all because of the subtle nature of them. And that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to utilize more subtle little cameras because they aren't as noticeable, and you would have a higher likelihood of catching honest activity. You know, you you'll catch them unawares with equipment like that, which is exactly a good way. So a really good way to do some basic research. You can understand their behaviors if they're not modifying their behaviors to avoid you. So mine I change color gray to blue depending on light. Yeah, there is some of that too. I've noticed. I notice that my eyes will be more blue when I'm out on the coast, and it might just be because there's a lot of a lot of white, a lot of light refraction off of ocean might also have something to do with your eyes absorbing more blue light or something potentially. Yeah, Yahweh Phil is the name in Australia. But you know, Yeti in the Himalayas, Yahweh in Australia, Bigfoot here. Every country, you know, has a particular name. Wild man, hairy man in the UK. We all countries have a particular name for them. You know, a historic name or you know, something that we understand them to be. But I think we're referring to the same creatures or the same types of creatures. And I do believe there are multiple different races of them within their species. Because, you know, there are just too many variations in the, you know, descriptions of them in some cases that suggest to me there's more than one type. And, you know, all the different species that I've been told about and some of the species that I've interacted with, you know, they're definitely different creatures. They speak the same languages, though. They interact the same way. So to me, that's one species, multiple races, potentially. Excuse me. Because they're all sharing the same language and communication types. If they were all speaking different languages, that would be very interesting because then they would have adapted to the countries that they're in. But it seems like they have retained their very ancient language. That was the other thing that my native side of the family has always said about them is that their language is very ancient. It goes back very far back into history. And if that's the case, and it is potentially some sort of a trading language or an original language that was used or utilized for trade, if it's always worked for them, they're not going to change it. We're the only ones that seem to have radially adapted out and away from them and niched our languages a little bit more than they have. It seems that their primary language is the same no matter where you go in the world. At least that's my thought, because up and down the West Coast, the languages have always remained the same, and it doesn't matter, you know, if I'm on near the Mexican border or all the way up in Canada. The languages that are spoken by these different cryptid groups still are, it's consistent. It still is same sets of language groups, be it, you know, Japanese, Chinese, Abadaki, or some other little Tagalog variant within those ranges of languages. It's always remained consistent. Oh, cool! You've seen six different types, Phil. Wow, that is awesome. I'd love to hear the different descriptions of them and what they look like and how they interact, if they interact, and what they do. Yeah, interesting concept there, Bad Pup. You're lucky you saw so many. This is in response to Phil. You've been marked for sure as safe to Sabe. Okay, it's Phil. Okay, Ken. In a recent video, you spoke of being carried to a council as a witness. Was this as an adult or when you were a child? I was 8 years old, 9 years old. When it happened, Ken. It was part of my witness of what happened to Jen Jen, what the Gugway was doing to her on our property, the molestations, the beatings, etc., being starved. And it was her husband to be a Gwantch man. It looked like Patty, you know, big gorilla looking guy. He carried me um, to the meeting site. It was several miles away. Didn't take him very long. And he stuck me in the bag that I had made so that I could be taken. And it One of the handles nearly, it started to rip as he was high speeding it open across open terrain. It worried me a little bit, but yeah, they move actually pretty quickly. In fact, NVTV, they just put up a piece not too long ago. It showed some very quick, shadowy looking movements. And if you take a look at, you kind of have to pause through the film because they were moving pretty quick, too fast for the camera to even catch. The second individual, you can see, they're sitting in a recessed area. You can see the outlines. They've got a very humanoid shape, glowing eyes, and then they both boonie out towards the front of the little recessed area, and it looks like it's a back alleyway or something. And then cross into the individual's yard. They move so quick, the camera can't catch them. It's the same issue that your eyes have. It's like your shutter speed's not quick enough to catch their movement. And when you slow that particular film down, the second one, you can see the feet on the edge of the drop-off point, the front where they're dropping off into the yard. But you can only see it for like 2 or 3 frames, where his feet are sitting on the edge there as he's jumping down into the yard off the rock wall. So part of it's they move way too fast for us, for our minds to notice them. Bad pub. Squatch will mark people if safe or dangerous, etc. I still don't understand that. I don't get that, Mark. I don't understand that at all because either you're acting appropriately and you are not seen as a threat, and they feel congenial around you, or you are aggressive and they consider you a threat and they will avoid you. That's the only two things I've noticed about them. Um, but I don't consider that marking in any way. And I don't understand why people keep referring to their interactions in that manner. For instance, like if you go out into a pasture of horses, is a horse going to mark you? That doesn't make any sense. If you're interacting with a bunch of bears, are the bear going to mark you? Again, the cryptid people, they are living beings. They're not supernatural. They're flesh and blood. They live like we used to as primitive human beings. That's the only thing, is they're still living like primitive human beings. They're still using rudimentary tools. They're still hunting in a very indigenous manner by hand. I don't. I think we have a lot of modern mythology, and unfortunately, I think some of that modern concept mythology actually prevents us from understanding what might be obvious and right in front of us, because we're putting our own concept on the scenario. It's something, in order to do any kind of research, you have to kind of remain neutral. I've got my opinions, but when I'm out there, I try to remain neutral as much as I can. I might have my own worries or concerns about certain cryptids, and I might not want to be in certain areas for very long because of the type of cryptid there. But I'm not worried about it marking me and marking me and following me. It's just like the skunk up here. They were already in this area when I moved here. It just I happened to notice them. So I think part of it is, we as a species of human beings are grappling with the concepts of what they are and how to interact with them and what the interactions are. So we're trying to put stuff on it that may or may not be accurate. Hello, Miss Bell. Welcome. Phil, do you know the official name of Patty type human Yahweh? Muscle bound superhero body types. no head, and dog-headed juvenile. Well, the patty-looking ones are call themselves Gwantch. My adopted father looks like that. Bear men. I don't know. I don't remember anything except the translation name for them, bear man. I was like 10 when my grandmother told me that was 50 years ago. Uh, the no-head ones are, they're from the other planetoid that they supposedly fell from. They've got a particular name, I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the Shunka Oak are what dog-headed people call themselves. At least that's what my native grandmother claimed. The Shunka Oak was their name. Thank you, Cosmic. I'm so glad you were able to translate. I'm not real good at that particular language. Dog-headed is dogmen, different types of them. Well, there's also this supposed, what were they called? Uh, Cynocephali. Cynocephali supposedly had a different body structure than normal dogmen. Cynocephali supposedly had a human-like body with a dog's head. So they actually had human feet instead of dog feet, supposedly. So there's that potential, if those ancient histories descriptions are accurate. Ancient. That was the 12th century, so about as ancient as it gets, 1,000 years ago or so. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I know of at least three different types of dogmen, though they look very similar. They're different sizes here. And then there's, the Oma and the Gwantch. One looks more like a gorilla, and the Oma look more like chimpanzees in the face. And then the Ishka, they look very much like flat-faced. Their females look like flat-faced mandrills or baboons, maybe. And then the males look far more human in the face, so they've got the funny bone protrusions. Boogers, they look a lot more almost baboonish. So there are different facial types along with different species types. So it really makes me wonder how far back they go historically. In how ancient are these different species? Because their overall characteristics, their body structures, seem to be far more robust than ours. They have a lot more hair coverage, which again, they don't require clothing for the most part because, well, they wear their coat. And the stories of them go back incredibly far. I mean, there's pictographs of some of these things. That's 30, 40,000 years back. So it really makes me wonder how ancient these creatures are. How far back in history do they go? We're probably just another little offshoot. You know, I don't think our family tree was one line of primates, for instance. When you start examining the archaeological record, you're dealing with, Homo francis, you're dealing with robustus, you're dealing with multiple different kinds of ancient primates. It makes me wonder how many of them have survived to today, and we just keep ignoring the fossil record, because there's that possibility. The Smithsonian has thousands and thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of bones that have never had any research done on them. We have no idea what potentially is in our bone record because we haven't worked on it in 100 years, for the most part. We haven't been focusing on that. And I think it might have been because, people at turn of the century got a little scared of what they were seeing, and it became the thing to do was gather up the bones, throw them in a box, hide them, oh my God, don't talk about the giants. And we still have that a little bit going on in our cultures and societies. We've got to get over that if we want to solve what our history was. If we want to understand what our beginnings were, I think we really need to look at this in a different way. It's not about mythology. It's about what's factually there. And we shouldn't. Personally, I don't think we should be afraid of what's factually there. It means that we have a far more rich history with potentially more offshoots to our family tree than we've ever realized. Indigenous people understand some of these cryptids, and some indigenous people still understand them today. But modern man, we've categorized things so much we are ignoring them now. We're ignoring what our potential history was. We think we've figured it out, and we don't want to change the history book, so to speak. Yeah, I'm always trying to keep the thought flowing on these things because it's, to me, with the variations and the varieties of them I've been told about, and the ones that have been shown, there's far more out there than we realize. And it doesn't behoove us to put them under one label, but it's probably because we don't know any better. We've lost a lot of history, so it's difficult for us to speak about something clearly when we don't have a clear image in our head of what we're talking about, and we don't have a clear descriptive word in association with the critter that we're talking about. And we can talk about a deer, everybody knows what a deer looks like. We can talk about a bobcat, everybody knows what a bobcat looks like. But when you talk about, Bigfoot, you got multiple different kinds of images you can choose from. Does it look like Patty? Does it look like something else? Does it, and then with that confusion, we kind of make this assumption that we're only dealing with one thing out there. But that's not potentially the case. We're potentially dealing with a heck of a lot more than just one type of critter out there. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Hugs and Happy New Year. Glad you came. Okay. Phil, don't go looking for them. I go to my firewood hunting, hiking, and they come to me. Yeah. Once they realize you're in an area and that you are friendly and not dangerous to them, they'll have a tendency to get really curious about you. It's something I've noticed with every research area that I've gone into. Uh, you, Once you start delaying or pausing in an area, they have a tendency to start trying to interact with you. But when you read up on like research concerning orangutans, chimpanzees, gorillas, etc., it's a certain level of habitualization. You have to be in their territories in order for them to become comfortable enough to interact with you. So I think a similar thing is going on with Bigfoot. I don't I don't think there's any kind of marking going on, or that they're any kind of a biblical thing. Besides, I've spoken to individuals who have very good religious backgrounds, and they're pretty sure the Nephilim have absolutely nothing to do with Bigfoot. So I think that might be a confusion point, and it's probably because of our own superstitious minds. Oh, you're up around the Prince George area, Phil? Wow, you're gonna have a lot of activity up there. That's always been known as a highly active area. Even natives knew there were lots of Sabe up in that area. I like that, Bad Pup. Wisdom comes from many areas. God, reading experience, learning from elders, expanding your knowledge. God gives us a brain to question things and not be deceived, which is everywhere in our world. Yes, very, very true. Yeah, a lot of the information is repressed about these. Our governments just they refuse to talk about cryptids in any way, shape, or form. Probably because it's too difficult for them to talk about it. They have to. I mean, if they actually are human beings, for instance, if they are part of our family line, all of a sudden they have people they can't control. One, how are you gonna make them pay taxes? Are you gonna make them go to work? It's not gonna work. They're going to remain indigenous. They're going to remain as they always have. And I don't personally think that we actually have to do anything except realize they're there and discern which ones might be potentially harmful to us. And those areas where they are potentially harmful, maybe we should have some signs saying, hey, you don't want to hang out down here. There are gugway down here. And to me, that makes some sense. But, I might be oversimplifying this, to say the least. But at the same time, there are plenty of places that you can go and interact with them, and you're not going to have bad interaction. I mean, all of the hillsides that I've been hiking on recently, those are all right at the county line. None of them are in the deep woods. They're not that far out of town. And people hear stuff up there on those particular hiking trails all the time. They don't see anything because they stay hidden. And that's habitually their habit, is to stay hidden. They don't want to interact with us. They don't like interacting with us because we are bad creatures. We don't have the moral standings that they have. We don't live the same way that they live, and they don't they don't appreciate our bad behavior. Put it that way. Yeah, Phil. All of British Columbia is a hot spot. Yeah, when I was living on Vancouver Island, it was definitely a lot of activity on that island alone. Yeah, I would tend to agree. People do have a tendency to even in pictures, um, either they can't recognize the image, or as soon as they see it, they unsee it. The people that don't have that much of a problem with picking out stuff in pictures are hunters. People who forage a bit or are familiar with the woods. They can go, oh yeah, I can see that. There's a dark object there. Oh yeah, yeah. I see face. I see feet. I see hands, etc. But most of us who are not used to being out in the woods, one, don't know how to look, don't know how to see, so it's harder for us city folk to understand what we're looking at in a picture, let alone what we're seeing out in the woods. If you do see something like that, and it is rather large, there's a good chance you will repress the memory. I had a actually had a memory come back the other day when I was, and I've been around them all my life. When I found that really peculiar, leafy-looking pattern track. I had seen that track once before down in I think it was the sequoias, redwoods. It's off the Eel River area in the Redwoods, if I remember right. When I was about 8 years old, I had asked my mom what kind of track, what did that track come from? What is that thing? And my mom claimed it was one of the Rojan, and I didn't realize it until I saw the track physically again. And where I'm stuttering there, I'm like, I'm not gonna say it. Yeah, total flashback. I remember seeing one along the river, and it had been in an area where we were camping, and my mom had already told me, "Don't go down there. Don't bother that thing." And I didn't. I was too young to realize she was talking about a completely different cryptid. Yeah, I thought it was maybe an Oma or Gwantch, something I'd been used to seeing. So I went against her advice and I went and I looked in its shelter because it had this funny little kind of shelter that was built up against a hillside right next to the riverbank. And it looked like the front side of a mine, the way it was built, the way it was constructed. It just had poles on either side and then a little bit of a roof across the top. And when I got up to about or so of the shelter, I noticed that whatever was sitting in there had claws. Yeah, it had the really, really, really long arms, and then it had like a crab claw hook. It confused me, so I got too curious and I went and I looked directly into see its face and its upper body, and it was very crab-like in the face, though it looked very human. It also didn't look human, and that I totally forgot about that particular sighting until I saw the flippin' footprint again. I'm like, oh, okay, I know what that is. And I'd totally forgotten. All my life, I had not, it was like, I saw it, and within a week, the memory was gone. Yeah, you have grizzly, cougar, black bear, marines, and they can kill all of it. Yep. Deer and elk, too. Yeah, that's very true, Phil. Anything bigger than us has a tendency to be able to stomp the hell out of us. Uh, yeah, you really do have to be aware of the woods. And that's the other thing is when you're going out, note little differences, note little changes, because sometimes some of their movement and some of their interactions with the woods, the Sabe's interactions are incredibly subtle. Okay, Ben, question. Those who are now using fire, do they do so with Dakota fire holes? Stealth, yes. There's some of that going on here, Ben. Where they use a Native American fire pit style, just simple hole with an air vent feeder shaft, and you set your pot on top of it. Yeah, they use that here along the rivers. You'll find that dug into the hill bank, sides of the hills a lot in the embankment areas around this area. And I've even had people come to me going, "Hey, I've seen a Native American fire pit. Why is it here? Are there Native Americans living in the woods out here?" Like, well, yeah, kind of. They're indigenous Sabe people, but yeah, they use that same kind of thing. And that's another reason why I say they're living very historically. They're living like ancient indigenous people did. They utilize a lot of the same tactics for foraging and for preparing food and for sustaining themselves. Okay, Phil, do you know how Sabe ways vanish or start from nothing? Yeah, I've noticed that you gotta look for outcroppings, trees, and jump points. Because they can do a standing broad jump of about 30 feet, as far as I can tell, 30, 40 feet. A normal human can do a standing broad jump at about 10 foot. So there is also the potential that they're not disappearing tracks, they're just uh, out of place because they've intentionally moved in such a way in order to displace one set of tracks from the other. There can be various reasons for it. Maybe it's because you're tracking them. Maybe it's because they were after something, like if they're coming after a deer or something, and might run or jump towards a deer or down from a tree, and all of a sudden, prints will appear with no lead-in trail. Oh, cool, Ben. Okay. I don't know a lot about the Mothman. I know that my native grandmother, Victor, said that the chrysalis people, the people that were born of our dino eggs, so to speak, stone babies, were said to develop uh, oddities. Some of them would have wings, some of them would have very different body structure than us. So there's the potential that Mothman might be part of the chrysalis people from the native lore. I don't know enough about that particular cryptid, and I've never encountered one. Uh, the only thing I've encountered is the peculiar female here that has the funny little antenna, and I haven't seen her in years, so I don't. And I never tried to follow her because she always walked on hard ground. She never would leave a track anywhere to follow. Okay, Cosmic. I think when they teach the juveniles to build structures, they're also getting lessons in geometry in general for many reasons. Uh, Agricultural structures, to grow food, larger meditation structures. Yeah, there is some inclination of that because some areas you get out in, uh, man, the structures get really detailed. I do have one up from the Umpqua that's very detailed. It's got that uh, backside of the structure is very much like the teepee structure style. It's built around a central pole, but the front side of that particular structure is very igloo-like. It's got a little doorway and it has a little, you know, kind of porch area at the front of it. So it's a kid structure, where they're babysitting the little ones and keeping them occupied. But it's covered over with moss. It's completely dry underneath it, and it was big enough, probably 15 foot deep and maybe 20 feet across. It was big enough to shelter probably 8 or 10 little ones in there if they were trying to stay out of the rain. So the other is a lot of these people don't like being rained on, even though that they're wearing fur coats, so to speak. They still don't like the rain very much. Okay, Cosmic, I recently showed examples of microjuvenile structures enclosed in a square and a circle on the ground sticks by geometry. Yeah, when they start roping off the area, so to speak, they definitely have little ones. I found structures like that up in Washington a lot. They'll take like vine maple or whatnot, and they'll bend it in a big circle. And sometimes there'll be a structure at one end that's very well covered, and inside that structure you'll find play evidence. A young one, a very young one, is typically being housed in an area like that where it doesn't have elder siblings. Mom or dad's off foraging. Usually it's mom is off foraging within, a few feet of the baby, but they're left in the structure with kind of a baby corral to keep them kind of isolated so they don't wander off. And it's usually in safer areas where there aren't a lot of coyotes or wolves or whatnot, where you'll find those sorts of, little baby structures. And then you'll see the play evidence. The young ones have a tendency to build the same kinds of, you know, structures that the bigger ones do. They're just still learning. So their structures are sometimes a little more collapsible or they're a little different. But they do make little tiny replications of the bigger structures. Oh, cool. Thank you, Cosmic, for doing that. Oh, Phil, a sleeping area I went in, ground beds under large western hemlock. Yeah, I've seen that too, where they'll make sleeping structures like between fallen logs or down in a recessed gully area where there's a log over it, or someplace where there's an outcropping. You know, they a log has been dropped over an area that's angled, and it provides some shelter. All those kinds of locations I've seen evidence of Sabe individuals sleeping under those areas. Sometimes they'll lay down foliage. I've even seen some really neat day beds. Now, some of these are day beds too. Some of them are utilized not just at night. The log ones have a tendency to be utilized during the day a lot too. And the other thing I've noticed up in Washington, which I would love to get some pictures of, are the cliffside outcropping beds. So you'll at the coast, you'll notice the trees that have a bend where they are growing out over a cliffside, and the tree will come out and then it bends up. I've seen a few areas up there where Sabe, a Bigfoot, has woven. They've used bigger pieces of material between a pair of outcrop trees like that, and they will build a bed. Just a hang point where you can kind of hop down over the side of the cliff. You hang out in the bed system. You can look down at the beach. You're completely secluded from being seen from above. You can't be seen from the side because it's all kind of, woven in such a way where it looks like just a bunch of brush sitting there. But when you get inside of those little outcropping beds, you've got quite a bit that you can see, and you know, you're really stable there. You're not going to fall out of it. I bounced around in a couple of those, with the expectation I was going to be sliding down a hillside. Never happened. They're pretty stable, but it's a structure I haven't seen many people get any kind of pictures of, and I would love to be able to get some pictures of those. So hopefully soon I'll be able to do some more travels as soon as I get rid of my van and get a little change in my pocketbook for gas. Maybe I take some field trips more often and do some weekend field trips up and down this coastline, show you some neater stuff, not just local stuff, but things out and about. Yeah, uh, I've seen under the log structures like that. I've seen 3 and 4 foot round trees that are being used as shelter. So yeah, no, they typically it's pretty dry under those kinds of shelters. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, I've got to get the little GoPro style camera that I was sent up and running, and I got to figure out how to use it. I've charged everything. I got to go get some batteries for uh, the game camera, and I got to read through the manual. It's something I was going to do this weekend. This week's been kind of busy though for me with trying to trade out vehicles and get titles dealt with and all that jazz. I've never seen any of them completely vanish in front of me, Phil. No, I did have the experience with Jen meditating though, and looking like she was thin. But yeah, I would say it's more like the Jedi mind trick. Because my native grandmother used to say this all the time to me. She'd say, "They'll make you think they're not there." And I'd ask her, "Well, what do you mean by they'll make you think they're not there?" My grandmother would explain it. Well, you're not able to think sometimes when they are near, you're not able to conceive or your brain won't interpret. And what she was trying to describe was like a mind suggestion, maybe a maybe a hypnotic suggestion that they're putting in your head. You can't see them because the concept has been removed, is kind of how grandmother would describe it sometimes. I was never able to get her to describe what she meant really well, but it seemed like what she was referring to is that some Bigfoot have the ability to blockade your perception of them. Like, you can see them, but you don't see them. Like the little critter that I took the picture of, when it flew in, I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but when I looked directly at it, I couldn't see it. I still snapped the picture of it because I knew it was there. And in fact, a lot of the pictures that I do get are simply because I pay attention to the fact that I potentially can't see them, but I can sense that they're there. So, either I've heard movement into the area, or I have the feeling that, yeah, I'm being watched from over there, so that's where I'll take pan and take my picture. And I've had really good luck, actually, doing that. It's how I've gotten a lot of my stills of some of the more unusual creatures, especially when it's in an area where I haven't been introduced to them, and I don't know exactly what's in the area. But you can sense, and if you follow your senses, you can get some pretty good pictures by just following your instincts and clicking a picture. Because the camera, whether your mind is able to pick it up or not, the camera lens will still be able to pick it up. And in fact, there are some people that have recorded them in their yards, for instance, or on their property, and they've been out face to face and they can't see them, but the recording still goes. Recording still has the image, you know, but they do blockade sometimes. They do blockade your ability to see them. I don't know exactly how they do that. It's probably some sort of telepathic thing going on, or maybe it's some sort of hypnotic thing that's going on, where they're kind of mentally suggesting to you that you can't see them, because there is that intonation of some sort, that sort of thing. Native stories talk about that a bit too. Huh. I would really love to see those kinds of images. It would be really neat if somebody could catch that stuff. I mean, there's been some of that kind of phasic thing caught on on Expedition Bigfoot. Um, some of it might just be moving too fast for us to notice. Some of it might be that they're making a mental suggestion to us. Um, Only time will tell. We'd love to have some more information on that personally, because that would be a very interesting part of research that is absolutely not like other animals, be the be them prehistoric animals or otherwise. We don't that's those kinds of abilities would be abilities that would be like you know the thoughts of ninjas, or some sort of highly trained monk, or an individual who has dedicated a lot of time to uh, understand their own energy field well enough they can hide it from you, along with their image. That would be a neat skill to have, actually, if it's something that we can learn. Okay, Phil. 1 equals water looking, guitar shape, some size cracking. I study 3 feet from me. Huh. caused by a bear man. Well, the bearmen and badgermen are actually some native lore stories claim that they are lightning workers, storm workers, and they have some very special abilities. And some native stories get into how they can focus the energy of storms. So there is some inclination of that potential. Interesting, Phil. That pup, yeah, I find out how to get rid of criminal bad entities like shadow people, etc., which are real and very on how bad. Go talk to a medicine person. Start using your tobacco ghosts, otherwise you're gonna have to banish the thing out of the area. Uh, Shadow people were known to Native Americans too, and it's part of the reason when we're going into the woods we use tobacco. It's to keep things like that away from us and keep them from following us home. Interesting, Phil. Yeah, like I said, I don't know everything, and I'm sure that other people have had different experiences than I've had. Uh, I'd love to see some of it on video. And there are a few videos out there that have some very strange things going on in them. It makes me wonder. Okay, World Bigfoot Central. I have two different guests on my show who were chased in their cars. They had to get up around 50 miles an hour to start pulling away from them. Yeah, there have also been recordings. I think there was a train conductor that clocked a Bigfoot at like 80 miles an hour. So some of those cryptids can move pretty quickly, and I know that the Gwantch claimed that he could move fast enough the human eye couldn't see him. And when he took off in that clearing, I felt like I was in a jet taking off. I didn't feel like I was being carried by a human being, put it that way. I felt like I was in some sort of incredibly fast, all of a sudden, bang, fast moving, really fast moving G-force kind of incident. So it makes me wonder if they're using their own energy or their aura or some other mm, physical characteristic that they may have that we may not have. Or maybe it's just a learned way of moving that requires meditation. I don't know. I don't know if there's been people in history that have. We've got recordings of people, historic records of people who can levitate. We've had historic instances of people, spontaneously combusting. There've been other stories. I don't know. Is there any stories of people though that could appear and disappear, other than trained individuals like ninjas? They supposedly can appear and disappear, but that's all because of a learned trait, of an understanding of finite energies that most people don't have the training to understand. Hmm. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Bad pup. Sabe can leave an energy mark whether you're a threat or good. That's what a hunter has said from numerous testimonials. Well, that would also suggest that we could do the same thing then if it's just an energy mark of some kind. That would be like being able to recognize the energy, though. You'd have to. You'd basically be tagging part of your aura to the person potentially, or the area's aura. But then that may not be impossible actually, because energy is pretty flippin' malleable. Yeah, I've not seen portals or vortexes down here, but that doesn't mean anything. I try to keep an open mind for that sort of thing because I don't know everything. I just know what I've been around, and I just know what I've seen. But, different parts of the world have very different potentials. The thing, Phil, is they are everywhere and anywhere. Maybe they let you see them and maybe not. Yeah, that's true. But if they've been living here for thousands of years, if not millions of years, and we've been living right next to them and not realizing it anymore, because we just ignore them, uh, then they've had plenty of time to live as they've wanted while we lived as we wanted. And they probably have some very exceptional skills, considering they don't join our society. Those exceptional skills have all been groomed to keep them visually um, separate from us. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be interacted with. They don't like our behaviors. They don't like our bad nature. They consider us far more violent than them, believe it or not. They consider us more grotesque, too. We have bad habits, bad behaviors. We don't take care of our mates. All of our bad behaviors is why they don't interact with us. Yeah, the blems. That's right. Thank you for bringing that up. The no heads, the blems, and those have been recorded multiple times in ancient history and even medieval history. Bad puppet. Yes, we need the armor of God, the Creator, around us as they are being attacked on all fronts. Well, that's a funny thing, bad pup. That's the same thing Sabe referred to. They also believe in the armor of God. They consider it their skin, just like us. It's our house. God gave us this house. It's just our soul that lives in it. If you don't take care of your house, your soul becomes polluted. Okay, can shape wood like it's smelling. I think the same thing they do with rocks. Lots of wild shaped rocks, tools they make. Well, I know that the wood and the branches, when they are working with them, they're loosening the fibers by physically breaking the material and kind of wringing the branch to make it kind of floppy so that they can twist it and bend it and move it and shape it or braid it. Um, the stone, though, I'm not quite sure how some of that stuff is formed. Because I've seen some stuff that looks like it's been carved and very diligently polished, shaped, you know, probably using other stones to do it. Uh, but they're all very, very rudimentary. And I mean, they do have good shapes. And yes, they are, the relief carvings that they do are accurate. Like they can accurately represent a dog, a cat, etc. when they're carving. But I think they're using tools for most of that. They're either using other stone tools or they're using metal tools that they've, adopted from us or picked up. I don't think they're using any kind of high tech anything. I don't think that they're shaping it with their minds or anything. I think it's physical. I think what they're doing is incredibly ancient technology, physical. It's just the old way is still being utilized. Like Denisovans. Denisovans use drills to drill through jade bracelets, for instance. We've got a fragment of a bracelet that had a power drill. And that's, Uncle Ong's old reincarnation dream. He talked about using a wheel uh, to run a pulley system that ran a drill. In fact, he said the first bicycles weren't bicycles so much as a power system for a drill. So if you've got ancient cave dwellers They're using high-speed drills because they figured out how to hook up a wheel and done the Gilligan's Island thing, for tag. Then there's probably quite a bit we don't realize about our ancient history. If any of those kind of intonations are actually correct, then the wheel was probably not invented originally as a wagon wheel or a chariot wheel or any kind of a wheel like that. It was originally invented to run a drill, which seems more logical actually when you look at some of the material around the world and the buildings around them. Look at pyramids; they've got drill holes going through them. Some of those stones have drill holes that are 3, 4 inches in diameter and go on for 12, 14 feet, and they're straight. So that's difficult to achieve through hard material. Normally, a drill will drift, even in a thin piece of material. If your speed versus your material versus your drill, what it's made out of, if that doesn't all equate out correctly as to drag, etc., you're going to have drift in your drill hole. It's going to change. It's not going to go down in a straight line. It'll go in a curved line because maybe your drill is not running fast enough or is running too fast for the drill head and the material being drilled to work copacetically together. If you've taken any machining or classes and that sort of thing, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Drills have some drift issues depending on material. So for an ancient people to drill an item, it shows some different thought than we expect out of them. We've always been told that ancients just napped tools and pounded on granite with bronze tools to shape them. If you pound on granite with a bronze tool, you're gonna dull that tool in about 20 seconds because bronze can't handle that. Even tempered bronze probably couldn't handle that. It takes tempered steel to chip rock and not severely blunt very quickly. So, to work with a drill in ancient times, you're going to have two of you use some sort of diamond powder as a drilling lubricant, or you're going to have used some sort of a material that's harder than the material that you're drilling through. World of Bigfoot Central, St. Christopher was supposed to have been a cynocephaly. Yes, and when you do some research into St. Christopher, you'll actually find that he was from the Marmariki tribe of the Berber people, and the Marmariki tribe is described as being giant dogmen. They're still described today by the Berbers in the same way. When I was in college, I had a Berber friend, and we talked a bit about the Marmariki tribe and what they really are. So when you go digging into St. Christopher's past, you'll find that he was captured during a battle along with several other of his people because the tribes were all dog-looking people. He was resold 3 times through the different slave markets in the Mideast, and then he was third time finally sold to the church. That's how he eventually gained his freedom again. But he converted to Christianity. He became the patron saint of travelers in later times. And at the end of his life, which he was only in captivity about 10 or 14 years, he was actually beheaded for being a Christian because he had been converting other Mamarike tribal people, to Christianity. And it aggravated, you know, religions in the area. And he was killed because he was Christian. Do some digging on St. Christopher. You'll find some really interesting stuff out about him. You got to go to a college library typically to do that level of digging, though, because your public libraries just aren't going to have the information in them. Okay, Phil Blems, yes, mine spoke with me. You did not see me, he said. You do not. You did not see me. Those are the words that Jen Jen would say too when she was disappearing. You cannot see me, you do not see me. So I think it is a mind suggestion. I think you might be right on that. Bad pup, what food do Sabe and Dogman eat? Whether meat or plants? Well, I know that Jen Jen ate omnivorously. She ate a bunch of plants, various plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, little things like groundworms, uh, rats, mice, birds. Uh, Dogmen seem to have a very similar diet, believe it or not. But for some reason, in this area, dogmen have a thing for flipping rockhorn. For some reason, they really like rockhorn. It's not good for them, but they'll raid a corn patch here in the. They'll raid corn patches in this area. It's part of how I find them. Uh, I'll watch the different cornfields in this area, and when I find one that's got a torn up edge or corner area where you can see the ears have been turned but haven't been completely broken off. Because the weird thing is, it seems like they will uh, break the ear of corn and let it dry for a day or two before they eat it. So they'll break it, let it dry on the stalk, and then they come back collect it. I don't know what's up with that. But they also seem to have a relatively omnivorous diet compared to some other dogs. They do have a tendency to have some vegetables and roots into their diet as well. And there's also the potential fungus. They use mushrooms in their diet as well. Because Bearmen, Dogmen, and the Sabe, Bigfoot people all seem to have a spring and fall. They will forage for mushrooms a lot. So I think that's also part of their diets. Okay, Cosmic. You talking about what some called Flemmy or Cyclops with one eye in their chest? That's a good question. I hadn't thought to ask that. Okay, Leona. Yes, well, I will try to excuse me. Forget are mistaken. Blems, yes. Face in the chest. No top of head on shoulders. Yeah. Those critters were said to have fallen from the other planet, according to Uncle Ong's mythology or lore. Uh, yeah, Cosmic. Forgot who it was that said it earlier, but there seems to be a mind wipe effect sometime shortly after a sighting. Yeah, and that can either be because you're startled so bad that your own emotions are blocking it. You know, maybe it scared you too bad and you don't realize it. I think that's what happened to me when I was a kid. You know, that one scared me so bad I didn't want to remember it. But then there's also the possibility that, you know, maybe they're using suggestion, mental suggestion. You know, they're projecting a suggest we don't see it. Uh, don't pay attention to these droids. You know, kind of thing. Yeah, Bad Pup, I tend to agree with you. We live in a realm with so many diverse species out there. We haven't seen a lot of them. Yeah, that's true, and I think it's the fact that there are so many species that are incredibly different. It makes it very hard to sift through the material. It can be at times difficult to distinguish what kind of critter is in front of you, and that's part of why I've tried to match my grandmother's native lore to the different species because I realized very young, that there's a lot more out there according to my grandmother's lore, than they realize. So, trying to understand what they look like, where they live, how they act, what they do, that's always been kind of in the front of my mind ever since my grandmother, uh, started educating me about the lore. And then, just being out on my turnout and being exposed to three different types of cryptids all in the same area really brought it home for me that there is a lot more out in the basic wilds, not even out in the deep woods, just, you know, what's in your neighborhood more or less. There's quite a bit more there than we realize. We have a tendency to ignore it or be completely unaware of them. Yeah, World of Bigfoot, the greatest cover-up in history. It's a cover-up of history. Yeah, I'm 100% true on that one, I think. Leanna, yes, everyone's thinking about Bigfoot as one type of being with limited language behaviors and temperament does not serve us. Yeah, that's true because there's so many different kinds of things out there. Not just from what I've learned from my grandmother's native lore, but the people's sightings. Different things have been seen. Different things have been reported, and different things have been recorded by people, and different interactions happen. To me, that means there's a great, big, vast amount of information out there, vast differences in potentially what's out there. It more of a melting pot than we realize, in more ways than we realize. Okay, bad pup. Yes, I've seen the face, just humanoids with no head and early. Wow, wow. Yeah, I've been told stories about the Blems, but I've never seen one, bad pup. It's incredible that you've had a chance to see one. Leona, need better knowledge, like, yeah, thank you. Uh, Good discussions with a lot of different fronts. Yes, well, the only way we're going to be able to teach each other about these things is to educate each other, because nobody's going to give us a book uh, that's any kind of a straightforward explanation, because there just isn't any of that left. And Native Americans and most of them don't want to talk about what they know because they don't want them harmed. They realize that a lot of these people are cryptids, are actually just prehistoric people, and they don't want them hurt. That's the main reason why they don't want to talk about them. And then there are some now within the tribal systems that think that they are a lower archaic species that doesn't deserve our attention. I think that's a bad attitude on our part. I think that if we're going to understand anything about us, we're going to have to understand something about the Bigfoot people. Because if history is correct and we are the product of our environment and they are part of our environment, then how do they relate to us? What was their function? Are the stories true? Are we just offspring of them? Are we another branch of their family group? Are we just another cryptid in the world of cryptids? We can't be the end-all be-all. There's too much lore out there says that there's more out there than us. Yeah, World of Bigfoot, you're right. Those are in control, right? The history books. And colleges are really bad for that too. I hate to say it. The whole peer review stuff is more or less just to keep you under the thumb of the department head's intentions. So you can't go outside of Darwinism, for instance, without somebody freaking out. You can't talk about certain avenues of knowledge uh, without the departments freaking out. They won't give you a peer review on anything they don't agree with. If they put it this way, nothing new archaeologically has happened in 100 years, and people don't seem to take that in. I mean, yeah, we've had a few new discoveries. We've had the Denisovans. We've had a few genetic things pop up now, where we've discovered extra Neanderthals. But we're still not talking out that outside of that very narrow box. And that's because that very narrow box is what our colleges and our scientists are comfortable with. And that's unfortunate because they aren't doing history or knowledge any justice when they keep trying to stay inside that box. It doesn't lead to education. It leads to conformity, unfortunately. And I really wish they'd break that habit. I really wish they'd start opening up their minds and, actually pursuing science like we did at the turn of the century. The turn of the century archaeology and anthropology and things like that were a big hoo-yah. Everybody was looking for answers. And unfortunately, I think they found some answers they didn't like the looks of, and that scared them because those fields have maintained a very narrow channel of evidence ever since then. Yeah, there's a lot more, when you examine older books from the 16, 17, 1800s, you have a lot more information in those books, and some of them have a lot more concerning different kinds of cryptids. You might consider unusual creatures. Uh, and they were talked about more openly in books like from those time periods than they are in modern times. So it's got to be our mindset that's the drawback there, not history. Wow, Phil, really awesome. The different kinds of things that you've had a chance to see. Oh, cool. I love drawings. I love pictures of these sorts of things, and I don't mind that they're a drawing because it's still a first-hand, in my opinion. You saw it, you're able to draw it. To me, that's even more than a picture because it's your interaction, and there are details that you will put in a drawing that may not be in a picture. Because your memory, when you're kinesthetically drawing something, your memories are going onto that page when you're drawing it. It's not a snapshot. So there are details that you will innately draw that a camera may not catch as accurately. Eliana, SOS, discriminant, and maybe signs of danger potentially is high. Yeah, discernment, excuse me. Yes, it would be really nice to, especially in some of our park systems, because I know that some of our park systems do have some areas of dangerous cryptids, and it would be really nice to know not to go in certain areas, especially if there's, a lot of evidence, people going missing in a particular area. Instead of, not educating the public, it would be nice if they would educate the public a little bit, you know. We used to know these sorts of things. Tribes would tell each other, don't go down in that valley, don't go in that ravine, don't go in that box canyon, don't go over that ridge line. Those areas are inhabited by, people that'll eat you. So we knew those sorts of things intertribally. But today, that communication's just gone. It's lost. It's not there. Cute pup. That's why they call them controllers. In Japan, Cosmic, the honest with the public by posting signs that warn of cryptids in certain areas. The yokai, yeah, yeah. Japan actually does do that in quite a few areas. They even warn about cursed rocks and stuff as publicly, very obvious public notifications. And if other cultures can, why can't we do it? Maybe it's just our mindset. Bad pup. I'm here on Van Island now, but in town there have been dogmen on the island here. Are you talking about Vancouver Island, Bad Pup? Because down the Esquimalt area of that island, there are a ton of dog people. I used to live in that area, and they're all over that hillside, going down into the beach area there on that waterfront. Ben, probably if we get too wide awareness of these amazing people, the outcome could go in many directions. What if a bunch went to come out of hiding or want to come out of hiding, living in a house? They would be celebrities. Yeah, there is that. And there's also, what the government would try to expect out of them. Government always wants you to pay taxes. They want you to fall in line. I don't know if these people would care to do that sort of thing, even if they came out publicly. I don't think they would want to change their living behavior just because of our culture. And that's another downfall, unfortunately. Because if we try to make everything mold to our society, we end up destroying a lot of stuff. We've destroyed a lot of indigenous cultures already, uh, from trying to mold them into our culture. And think I don't think that would be a good avenue to take with the Sabe people. I think it would be better just to acknowledge that they're there, understand a little bit about them, know what not to do around them, know where you can be safe around them, and then know where the dangerous ones are. I think that's about all we can expect, because that's all we were doing as natives. We tracked which ones not to be around, and those that became too dangerous to us, like the face peelers or the Lovelock cave giants, those that were too dangerous, we eliminated. I don't know, is there enough of them left these days to eliminate them and not cause a problem? And I don't necessarily support that, because I think a lot of them could be avoided, but I don't think we should be looking at trying to manage them like they're animals either, because I don't think they fall in that group any more than we do. We're animals, um, but I don't think that we are. I don't think we're emotionally ready for some of this stuff modernly. We've been so far out of touch with the woods. I mean, most people don't. Most people never go and play hide and go seek in the woods for criminy sakes these days. They don't have any concept of going and hiding in the grass in the field. They don't. It's just not part of our culture. So there's that. There's that blockade too. Is that we don't have anything to relate to with them. They're we live in a completely different world, and I think that's another thing that keeps us from going forward with trying to understand them. We're so involved with our perspective of the world, we don't think that there is anything else out there, unfortunately. Um, Cosmic, I heard Vancouver Island used to be referred to as Ape Island. Yeah, that's what the locals still call it. And the locals still know quite a few areas up on Vancouver Island. All up through Nanaimo area there. You drive on some of those back roads in the forest up there, you hear all kinds of yowls, all kinds of sounds that are out of place. You hear roars and stuff that aren't bear or cougar or anything like that. You get down on the south point where there's a lot of people. You still have the same stuff going on. Uh, it, Victoria. There's still a lot of evidence all over Victoria. There are dog people around that area. There are Bigfoot in that area. That island is full of them. And it doesn't matter where you are on that island. Uh, People have had sightings and had interactions. And it's been an ongoing process for centuries. Ever since humans moved onto that island, there have been interactions with the various Bigfoot up there. So I don't doubt it in the least. Been up there, seen it myself. Yeah, John Bennernagel used to teach at the university there in British blah, 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 Victoria. He lived up in Nanaimo area, if I remember right. And he actually bought a piece of property up there in order to have some interactions with the Bigfoot. He heard stuff, saw stuff, but never got to see one directly, unfortunately. But yeah, the, he was a biologist up there. He's still got his information, his last book. If it isn't retained with his wife, it's his notes and his books and the information on his research is to be retained at the university that he taught in the faculty repository of information. So his material is still accessible. You just have to contact the university or his wife. I don't know if she's still alive or not. I haven't checked. I think she's passed away now. But all of his notes, all of his research, all of his information had been planned to be housed at the university that he taught at indefinitely. So that should all be accessible. You just have to have permission to utilize his information or to view it. Yeah, that's true, Phil. The old guys who knew, they held a lot back. Yeah, I think you're right on that. Because there was the few times I spoke with Bindernagel, because I knew him for a couple of years before he passed, and we met a couple times in person, and we spoke relatively regularly on the phone. He really had a lot more information, uh, from my understanding of his perspective. He had a lot more information than he even put in his books. There were some things that he spoke of, where hunters had run across tribes of Bigfoot that were mixed tribes that used tools, and they were 80 to 100 strong. He wasn't saying that publicly. From what I remember, he was also he spoke Sabe the Bigfoot, other cryptids through the UN process. So he also had some connections that way. And he did write a couple of books on Sasquatch. But he was a standard anthropologist, or not anthropologist, biologist, who had an interest in cryptids because of all of the recorded sightings. People's firsthand experiences was what kind of drew him into it. Okay, Bad Pep. Hammerson Peters' channel is great on all Canada cryptids and Indian lore, etc. Ooh, thank you. I will have to go check that channel out. Awesome. Well, that's I know some of you don't like Sonny Vader or don't think that he's got it going on. But I looked at some of the stuff on his channel, and it looks like what he has done is collected a very particular sets of what look to be very viable catches by common, everyday working human beings, and they've caught it dash camera, etc. Some of that stuff I'm familiar with some of the locations. Uh, Up in territories of Canada or in off old roadways. So there's a possibility a lot of his stuff is actually pretty accurate because of the level of scrutiny he seems to put that stuff under before he posts. I know he doesn't have a lot up, and I know that he's been pulling stuff from the net, but he seems to be scrutinizing what he's pulling very thoroughly before he puts it up. So that's something else to be considered. Don't always throw away a channel because it isn't sensational. Because if a person's honestly trying to give good information, they're going to scrutinize, and they're going to be very choosy and picky about what they include as viable material. Whereas, somebody who's working to make money off of it, sensationalizing it, they're going to put up a bunch of junk typically, or they're going to do the freak out mode. Oh my God, I'm running away. I'm just terrified. It's going to be a production. It's going to be Hollywoodite. Ugh. Um, that's not useful to anybody, and it doesn't really promote any kind of real avenue towards research. You might be able to get some good footage out of stuff like that, simply because the person might catch something by accident, or they might intentionally catch something even though they're still running around acting like a moron. But a lot of the production stuff to me is just Hollywoodite crap. Somebody running around in a costume, for Christ's sake, is really bad. It's really stupid, and it doesn't really help. You know, it doesn't help uh, any kind of avenue towards doing honest research, or to help expose what's really out there. This kind of, I hate to say it, channels are just hype, uh, but not all of them are. Some of them are just people trying to understand what's out there and trying to give exposure to others. And I think that's what Vader actually is attempting to do. He's trying to utilize what's already on the net and show accurate information. I don't think he's trying to make a production out of it, for instance, like some of the other channels. Yes, Cosmic. Some of the descriptions of Sasquatch I've heard on Emerson Peters' channel is about head wraps is true. I've gotten these descriptions from many local feral homeless people. Yeah, there are even native stories, and even and Bindernagel also spoke about sightings where there were necklaces around cryptids' necks, their shoes or boots that they were wearing, tools that they were carrying. Some of them wear loincloths to hide their junk. Um, there's a lot of different information out there that doesn't have a lot of exposure because it doesn't fit the mold, the modern myth, yet again, of what we think is out there. We think it's a big hairy monster that's going to be vicious and mean and eat us. So whenever you find a clip or a piece of information that doesn't fit that mental mold, no, I saw a Bigfoot carrying a tool, and he had a long braid and feathers in his hair, and he was wearing boots. That don't fit the mold. So that's going to be put off to the side in a lot of people's minds. But it's sightings like that that give you more information about what they're doing. That tells you not only do they make tools, they craft shoes, and then some of them grow long hair on their heads and can braid it. So, more information in that kind of stuff, but it's not what a sensationalist or somebody who has no knowledge of them is going to be drawn to. They're going to think that's fake when it probably is not. It's probably really accurate information, actually. Okay, Bad Pup, have you seen the video of Russian hunter Sergei in Siberia has a run-in with some strange cryptids? One of the most riveting, scariest ones I've seen. Ooh, I haven't seen that one. I would love to go see it. Randy Brisson. I've heard that name. I need to check into him. Phil, Eliza, have you seen or heard of beings with deer antlers? There is one medicine woman, Wendigo, in in this region. Um, been two sightings of her. I've seen her, and one other individual has seen her that I'm aware of. And we both described her as the same way. She looked like a Native American person in Native American clothing, buckskins, and she was wearing a headdress that had antlers, but it was obviously a deer head with antlers and the hide. But her her presentment is not physical. She presents psychically, so you can see her mentally in the region, but you can't physically see her. And I drew a picture of her to show her off. When I was describing the differences between Wendigo and Windigo, Windigo, spelled with an I, is a dark shaman that's taken up the practice of um, allowing themselves to be possessed or possessing others with the Wendigo spirit, or fighting against the Wendigo spirit, because there are all three of those avenues going on. And then the Wendigo, which is the spirit inhabiting you, and you become a flesh eater. You become cannibalistic to yourself or those around you. So they're the two types that I'm aware of. And I've never seen the flesh eaters, thank God, except for the potential crawler. But yeah, I she's always in the same area. There've been other people that have talked about having an uneasy feeling in that area, but they don't necessarily see her. Honey, are you getting tired of me talking? You want some affection and some treats? Okay. All right. Let me finish answering a few questions here, and I'll get out. I'll get out of this. My dog's starting to complain at me. Okay. Bad pup Phil. To do Phil. Okay. Phil, a man with goat legs was encountered in the St. James area 20 years back. Yeah, I've heard about that one. Uh, World of Bigfoot, Wendigo don't have antlers. Uh, that is something white men added to the legend. Yeah, and that's what my description shows, is that the Wendigo doesn't have antlers. It's just a human that's cannibal. But the shaman use a deer hide and antler mask. So it's a little of both. Okay. Okay, Cosmic. Someone was recently interviewed on Flash of Beauty that said they shapeshift as deer. Yeah, there are some shaman that can shapeshift. Uh, I've been told of that more than once within native communities. But it's just, learning how to do it. And I wonder if that's, kind of what some of the Bigfoot are actually doing. Maybe they're just aware of certain shamanistic practices, or maybe they have certain shamanistic practices themselves and do certain things that we don't commonly do anymore. Okay, bad pup. You need to watch some of the 400 videos in the channel. Okay. Well, I've seen animals, not animals, deer, hedgehogs, coyotes, chipmunks, several squirrels, maybe mind. Drag, huh? Interesting. Bad pup. Yes, the fact that they can manipulate our visual spectrum makes the shape-shifting thing much harder to discern. Yeah, no kidding. World of Bigfoot, I dug up reports over 300 years old. None of the old ones mention antlers. Examples of the reindeer Guinard in the book amongst the Titidi Bull. Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Normally the headdress sort of thing is just shamanistic. It has nothing to do with the actual Wendigo. My native grandmother's stories were basically that the Wendigo looks like a human being, just they're emaciated and usually eating their own flesh, and will eat your flesh. Yep, descriptions from the natives, late 1700s. Excellent work. That's a good way of, getting your information correct. Going back to the oldest sources you can find, that's always good. My goodness, I better get on this. It's almost been 3 hours. Let me see if I can get to a few more. Wow, you guys really have some good information going on with each other. Uh, Mills, can you explain the Bigfoot alien connection? I haven't noticed the Bigfoot or alien connection. Um, others, others may have had those kinds of experiences. Uh, the uh, the unusual nature of that doesn't seem to be here in this area of the Northwest anywhere along the West Coast. I mean, there have been instances where there are aliens in the same area as, but I don't think they are connected to the different Bigfoot. I think there's, maybe a ship falling out of the air. There was that incident over in Central Oregon when I was younger. To unusual lights or sounds in a region, but whenever I come across anything that looks like potential, alien lights or sounds, or maybe mechanical stuff going on, usually the Bigfoot are very leery of it. They warn of it, and they get it kind of on high guard about that sort of thing. So I don't think they're connected, at least not here in this region. Yeah, I agree with you on that one, Dad Pup. Yes, our world is not what it seems. The air and the electricity, the ether around us can be manipulated. Yeah, that's what historians, ancient historians, have always said. Ancient philosophers also come to that conclusion, as have you know Hindu belief systems and Buddhistic belief systems. They all talk about that sort of thing, about how our world is very energetic, and there's a lot more to it than we realize. I suspect some Sabe experiences are cover memories for abductions. Yeah, I don't know about that. Because I haven't really seen a lot of that sort of thing going on, but I would say a lot of our abductions are probably done by our own military in classified spacecraft. At least that would be an assumption I'd make. I mean, there are some aliens that come down to our planet. There's lots of suggestions about that, and there's lots of history about that. But, some of it's also probably just us doing it to each other. Uh, like I said, I still haven't had an experience that way. It's with all of the hundreds of different experiences I've had with Bigfoot, the alien end of it, drop in the bucket. I've seen a few unusual lights in the sky that people have gone, hey, that's an alien. Um, I've experienced a few unusual things, like potentially watching a saucer go down and having the resulting grid search pattern done by a 40-story tall spaceship that looked like a big pinwheel that over 4,000 of us saw in the area. And, military crawled all over the area, and oh wow, it's a weather balloon all of a sudden, and nobody saw that shit. Bullshit. So that sort of thing. But them going up into spaceships, Sabe going up into spaceships, I don't see it. I never had the experience of that, and there's nothing in any of the areas that I've been in that have ever suggested that to me. Could be different in other areas, but I haven't seen it here on the West Coast. All right, baby. Mount Shasta does have some peculiar stuff, though, around it, Bad Pup. And I get a creepy feeling about Mount Shasta every time I go about it, around it, in any way, shape, or form. I always have throughout my entire life. I don't ever want to go to Mount Shasta. I don't like it. Don't know why either. It just creeps me out. Always has. Oh, that's what's going on. She's getting hungry. All right, baby. Okay, yokai, Japanese cryptolore. They've identified a huge number of spirit cryptids. So much out of there not fully known yet. Alright guys, well I am probably going to have to wrap this up here real soon. Pepper's wanting to be out and about, probably go do her potty biz, and maybe have some dinner. Great Roger Lair was good at removing alien implants. I don't know of anyone that has taken his place. Yeah, I've heard that about him too, Cosmic. Yeah, you guys are making some excellent points here. Okay, Mystery History Channel talks about ancient high-tech used to create the megalithic ancient structures. Yeah, World of Bigfoot Central, I think you are very correct on that. There's also a documentary out on the pyramids and how they may have been utilized as power plants. But then, some of the methodology just for making those buildings 90-degree angles, perfectly cut. Uh, Tell me a chisel can do that. Not gonna happen. You're gonna have some sort of drift. Yeah, well, yeah, here's the funny thing. Aliens don't like people who smoke cigarettes. I wonder, oftentimes wonder if that's why Native Americans smoke so much tobacco. Yeah, we're trying to stay away from the star people. Okay. Yeah, Cosmic's got some really neat stuff on his channel. Okay. Okay, world. I figured out everything is a puzzle piece, and one thing leads to another, and a little by little, the answer truth is revealed. Yeah, that's very true. Oh, good. I'm glad that you tell the truth on your channel and don't hold back anything. It's the best way to be, Phil. You know, yeah. Conformity reality sucks away. So, yeah, no kidding. Conformity really deludes the truth or dilutes it, either way. Well, we humans think we run the world, but there is a parasite running the world, parasite race running the world. We're soul beings. One can move into higher. Yeah, that's true, Bad Pup. Well, if God is creation and creation is God, then all things are energy and everything is connected. And that's something that's very interesting too, because when you're getting into the different representations that the Sabe use to indicate man, they use the little 7 symbol, and they'll do it both directions, and sometimes upside down. Uh, but you also have a highly slanted 7, and then we have a 7 that has an open top. So instead of having this crook, it has this crook, or it will be very pointed and down. Those are all indications of whether or not you are to be feared and respected. Then you have to put your head down, around that particular person, like the Ishka. They are considered a grandparent. So it's a respect thing. Those that lift their heads up are praying, and those that are just straight 7 angle, and they're equal. It's not spiritual. It's just a way of being. We're both human beings. There's a lot of their language actually refers to themselves as people, human beings, personhood. They have a very definite identity with themselves as being humanoid, which is something that we don't think of when we're talking about Bigfoot. We think of them as a big hairy monster, but they don't think of themselves that way in the least. Yeah, and I've never had to call on Jesus in order to get out of an area. Um, that just isn't relevant in my opinion. And the reason is because uh, they're just a they're just another critter, another two-legged critter. And that's part of the whole modern mythology that actually kind of bothers me. I mean, yeah, do it for your own well-being, for your own safety, or what you feel is needed. But I'm sorry, these people are not Niflheim. They're not anything different or extraordinary. They might have a little bit different abilities, but I don't consider them to be out from outer space. I don't consider them to be from another dimension. Not when I can find their bed systems and walk into them. They sleep on the ground mostly. They don't. I mean, a few species sleep up trees. They'll weave big baskets in trees and sleep up trees. But the majority of these things, they're not anything other than a physical being. That makes no sense to me why we keep trying to add other things into the reality of them. Maybe it's our own perceptions that are going on there, but I haven't had those perceptions. I haven't had those interactions, so it's very difficult for me to think in those terms because that's not been my experience. I mean, I go to the same areas I've always gone to interact with the same groups that I've lived habitually in the same areas. So nothing's nothing's been extraordinary or unique or fantastical in any of those areas. It's just like going into a habitat and visiting old friends. Hanging out in the same area where they always have been hanging out. It'd be like going back to any area where there's a friendly group of critters. It doesn't matter if it's a family group of raccoons that are friendly with you, or if it's a family group of Sabe that's friendly with you. To me, it's the same level. They're there's nothing extraordinary about them other than the fact that they're huge and they're different than us. But other than that, they're just a physical being. At least that's been my experience. All right, bad pup. You have a good one. Then I don't think they would either. But awareness works both ways. I agree with your approach. Uh, we are bit squeaks compared to them. Yeah. And I think that lends to a lot of our fears, and trying to overlay other concepts with them. Trying to compensate for the whole fear factor. And that's something I've tried to address before. You kind of have to let go of the fear factor, because you'll keep putting in extra stuff just to try to compensate for your own emotional reaction to what's around you. And that's something I try to be very careful about. I try not to go that route, and just try to, you know, show their locations and their areas as earnestly and accurately as I can, because all I do is I walk in my path and I listen. I listen to the area. I try to get some interactions in the area. I try to sometimes get a little trade going on, so that I get some physical confirmation there's something there. It's not trying to understand how to get them into a pattern where I can maybe take advantage of that pattern, and maybe I can get some footage of them doing an action. Trying to map where they are sitting in particular areas, or uh, continually calling from the same region, or warning from the same area of the woods. It pinpoints where they're sitting. It pinpoints where they're at. It's pinpointing where they are communicating within their own group to each other from. So to me, they're very physical creatures. They're not other dimensional. I mean, whether or not they're going to be out and active one day uh, during the week is usually dependent upon the weather. It's not dependent upon anything else. It's whether or not they got enough food to hang out in their hooch and not get out of bed that day. If they've stocked up for a couple of days and they're well fed, they're not going to get out on a rainy day. There's no need to. If they've got a need for food, they're going to be out foraging, and they'll probably do that on better days. And then there are days where they're just goofing off, and you're going to hear different stuff. You're going to hear things that are not comparable for other days' activities. You're going to hear some different whoops. You're going to hear some different calls. You might even hear some completely different sounds, depending on what they're occupying themselves with, what they're doing. It changes, depending upon what kind of foraging they're doing, or whether or not they've foraged enough they don't need to forage for a little bit. And the behaviors that they do are very consistent. They teach their young ones. They utilize language. They uh, teach their young adults to be respectful adults. They negotiate marriages. There's some very mundane daily behavior that's very trackable. It's very consistent, and it's repeated. It doesn't change. So to me, I'm not dealing with something that flies off in a spaceship. I'm not dealing with something that walks through a dimension. They may have some special talents. They may have some special abilities. But to me, they're very much a physical being that are consistently in the same place. They don't move around. They're not running around like nomadic people. They have very consistent areas that they're in. They have very consistent things that they do. I mean, little ones make small structures replicating the big ones. You're going to see that a lot. Uh, Once they get to a certain age, they're going to be learning how to use those structures. They're going to use those kinds of structures throughout their lives. That's going to be a consistent behavior, for instance, that you will be able to find anywhere they're at. It's also like the language, Now that I finally got a confirmation from the other side of the planet, Huyat, set on the other side of the planet, lets me know that their language is also consistent. So not only is their kana consistent, their overall behavior, the way they make their structures, the way they utilize an area, how they mark their territory, etc., but their language is also consistent. So to me, again, that makes them an incredibly ancient species that we've just fallen out of touch with. Yeah, no worries, Cosmic. Had to stomp out the demonic trolls tonight. Sympathetic nature. Well, yeah, I always take lunch to my friends, don't you? If you're hanging out for lunch, are you gonna let your friend go hungry, or are you gonna bring him a sandwich? Because that's kind of how I see my interactions with these things. If I've gotten to the point where I'm trading with them or gifting them, it's more like just visiting friends, that live in the woods. Big whoop. They're not what we think they are. Yeah, while World of Bigfoot Central, there are Bigfoot shaman, and they do have headdresses with hide and antlers. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Out in their deer societies, they wear deer masks, deer skull masks too. And there's actually quite a bit of behavior like that. Uh, Bigfoot Central. That seems to be pretty consistent throughout the different tribes and family groups. They all seem to have a shaman somewhere in the group. Almost always there's a shaman somewhere in the group. It's just a matter of finding them. They have a tendency though to, when they're younger, they have a tendency to hang closer to certain areas. Like they'll hang close to sacred sites, and then when they get older, sometimes they will actually take up residency next to a sacred site as kind of a bodyguard for that site and a spiritual person for that site. I know of a couple of locations where that's been the case with different Sabe people, different Bigfoot people. Oh, no, I don't have any advice on how to thwart a Wendigo other than don't be in that area. That was something, you're basically fighting a dark shaman if you're dealing with a Wendigo. So you better be a light shaman, and you better know your prayers, and you better know how to throw demons the heck out of Dodge, because that's what you're dealing with. Hey, Macy, or Mercy, excuse me. Uh, how clever do you live? Glad to see you. Yeah, it's good to see you too. Uh, sympathetic nature. There are Sabe that have been cloned and engineered to serve a purpose for the aliens. Yeah, that's a funny thing. Our government keeps saying, they seems to be consistent. They can't clone Bigfoot. Uh, that also throws the whole alien stuff right out the window too, because they can't clone them. And that I do know. I've been repeatedly told that by what you call dark ops officials. Oh, we can't clone them. So, nice theory, but doesn't drive in my book. Because I already know they can't be cloned. Security clearances, I know. No clone. Uh, sorry. The tech is just not there. We don't have the technology sufficient to do that. Neither do the aliens. Because the aliens that are here are the little grays and those buggers. Um, they've been sharing technology with us, governmentally, and or giving us some of it, supposedly. But no, they can't clone them either, because that's been one of the underlying secrets within this government. There is no such thing when it comes to the Bigfoot people. There is no cloning. There is no alien in interactions. It's one of those things they don't talk about. They let you run with it. And I've talked to multiple people within our military over the years, and have been told some very interesting things as well. Like, they're very aware of our history with giants here in the United States, for instance. They're very aware of the different kinds of cryptids. Some of the branches of military are more aware than others. But our government will not address this issue whatsoever, which really sucks. Because it doesn't do us any historic good not to. It also doesn't, if we're trying to map our own genetics and how we may have come about, leaving a great big hole in our understanding is not going to help us out much either. But then, we don't actually have much of an understanding genetically. We think we do. But genetics and cloning and all that crap's only 20 years old. It's not like we've been doing it since, the 1400s or anything. Yeah, well, synthetic nature. There is definitely a patent out there, a piece of technology that supposedly can interact with the human brain and even implant thoughts, memories, and dreams into you, supposedly. And I believe it's patented in both the United States and Canada, if I remember right. Hey, Scott. Welcome from the UK. Yeah, a lot of us are here in the USA. Some of us are from Canada. Yeah, frozen north. I feel as I hunt a female Bigfoot feelings. I hurt a female Bigfoot's feelings. Yeah, that's possible to do. Yeah, you've got a good point there, World of Bigfoot. People think they are big, hairy monsters, but Bigfoot think we are tiny, hairless monsters. Yeah, very, very true. That was something I even understood from Jen Jen. She, because of the some of the things I had to do on our ranch, she thought my behavior was inappropriate. Because I autopsied mink. She thought I liked to do that job. I told her, no, I don't like doing that job. It's just a job I have to do. So it's our own behavior. some of it that they don't like. And it's because we don't live in tune with the world around us. We live in spite of the world around us, I guess, maybe. Mercy, that's what I've experienced with them too. Just beings tend to not want to be seen, but not evil in the supernatural sense. Yeah, I agree. Oh, you're kicking me. Okay, I know. Alright, it's been 3 hours, and I've been yammering too long. I would just say, oh, Scott, we are definitely not a political body here. Alright, okay, Mercer said that they get a reputation as pet killers to do no doubt to some that they have needed food or exploit any easy source. Yeah, well, there's still people in the world that eat dogs and cats too. It just depends on what part of the world you're in. So that behavior isn't any different than our behavior, actually. So we had one that kept letting the dog out of the run, but they'd always bring him back and latch him back up. Not preferable, but never harmed. Yeah, well, my little girl, she gets fed occasionally in some areas that I go to. I kind of want to throw the GoPro on her to see what's feeding her, because sometimes she'll be gone for quite a little minute before she decides to show back up. She's never hurt, and she's always fat and sassy from it, licking her lips. But, really makes me wonder what the heck kind of cryptid she's interacting with and who's feeding her. Because it doesn't happen in every area. It's just a particular couple of areas that sort of thing happens. Uh, wow, you live 500 miles from the U.S. border, Phil? That's a ways up there in the frozen north. Geesh. Alright, guys. Well, I have to let you go. And, you guys take care. I appreciate the fact that you were here for this little live. Uh, just, like I've said, I don't, I think we have a severe lack of understanding of them, and I don't think that we're doing ourselves any justice by not by not trying to do some research, and understand what the past history with them was, understand what the Native Americans understood of them, and try to recapture some of that understanding might help us a lot in our endeavors to try to do some research on these things. So as the weather clears and as I have more time to get back out in the field, I'll be doing more, hopefully, voice captures and maybe some more interaction captures if I can get that going. And my battery is really low on my phone, so I have to say goodnight. I wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate all of you for being here, and been great questions and great thoughts. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mercy. That would be something to see if you did add a GoPro. I wonder if they'd react to the camera or still interact with her. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. I've been trying to figure out, you know, how I can set that up. And as it comes around, and if I can find a way of doing that and not lose the dang thing, because I don't want to lose my piece of equipment, I'll definitely try to get some footage that way. Because I'm personally really curious what she's been interacting with and what she's been doing in some of those woods, because it's very consistent. It's only in two locations that that sort of thing happens. So anyway, you guys have a good night. Take care, and see you maybe over the weekend. I gotta try to get some more videos up. We'll see how that goes this week. Weather's been really cruddy, but I'll see what I can get. Have a good one.